Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to see some fresh faces in here. Thank you for coming out and welcoming Dr. Nakalagoke. As you know, this is part of a IDCE course that is on ideologies of race in development. And we wanted Dr. Lagoke to come and speak to many of his areas of specialization, but most specifically he's going to be talking about transitional justice and the apparatus that is the International Criminal Court. And as you know from his very provocative title, he's going to consider the ways in which the ICC is situated within an international political economy that produces particular bodies as racialized and disposable, in interrogating whether or not the ICC is a racist institution. So we're going to be thinking about who are the primary agents within the ICC and who are the criminals of the ICC as well. And so you know, of course, the case that we're going to be looking most specifically at is Côte d'Ivoire. So Dr. Lagoke is going to give us a general historical context for the militarized intervention in the Côte d'Ivoire following the 2011 presidential elections, and that led up to the ultimate arrest of the incumbent president, Laurent Gbagbo, and his subsequent trial and prosecution at The Hague, the headquarters of the ICC. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Nakalagoke.
You're live now. Okay. Thank you, people. My name is Nyaka. She said it, but one thing she did not tell you, as I'm trying to add something a little bit different from what she said. I am from the Ivory Coast. People say that they call it Côte d'Ivoire in French, but in English it is Ivory Coast. So for some reason it is difficult for me to say Côte d'Ivoire. So I may go from Côte d'Ivoire to Ivory Coast, but it is the same country. Now Amber is a very, very brilliant person, and I was fortunate, to have encountered her or to have met her. And when she was doing a PhD at Syracuse University, after a debate I had with one of the professors, Campbell, and then she contacted me, to interview me. And after she interviewed me, and she lost the document, and when it was a sign that maybe we have a journey to take together. And we've been working together, in the field of social justice. And then we believe in more freedom for the oppressed, and particularly for the Africans. And so when she invited me, I decided, to come. I'm going back tomorrow because I have many things to do. But for Amber, I can always, find time and make room in my schedule, to honor her and then to respect her and to appreciate and to support her. So, having said that, I want to talk about the International Criminal Court. If you look at the PowerPoint, you see 65 slides there. I'm not going to go over each slide. I'm not going to do that. And I know you guys are very patient, but you may lose your patience when somebody has an African accent and is going to talk in the afternoon and read like each slide and then read all the 65 slides. So I'm not going to do that. But there are many more pictures there. So this, I told Amber, I've been doing this, but I wanted to put more pictures, because when they say Lumumba, there are people who never saw his face. So I have to find those faces so that you can see. So let me do it in a different way. So if I will do it because I've been doing this, and then later on, I may find some specific slide that I'm going to share with you. Gbagbo Laurent is here. The guy in the middle. This is at The Hague, which is in Netherlands. And there is an International Criminal Court that was created in 2002. And there was a treaty called the Treaty of Rome. And many social activists, many freedom lovers, many justice seekers, blacks, whites, Africans, Asian, Latin American, many were hoping that it was very important to create such an institution, because in the history of international justice, they tried after the Franco-Prussian War, and then in 1872, one of the first, to express the idea of the international tribunal was Gustave Mounier. So he was also one of the founders of the Red Cross. But it did not succeed because many Europeans were jealous of their sovereignty. The same issue that they had in the 19th century, the same issue that many African countries have today, the same issue that powers like America or China or Russia, who have supported somehow the International Criminal Court, but who did not sign the Treaty of Rome in 1998. So, after what Gustave Mounier proposed, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about the journey of the International Tribunal. We have, after World War I, the trial of Leipzig. It did not succeed too much because they gave the opportunity to the Germans who lost the war, to try Germans. So of course you can imagine people were biased, and it did not succeed. Later on we had the trial of Nuremberg, one of the famous, and also Tokyo. But Nuremberg, after World War II, people noticed that the victors, Russia, the United States of America, and China, and England, and France, they chose not only the prosecutors, but they chose also the judges who were supposed to try, those who have lost the war. And then the issue of the victor justice was already denounced with the trial of Nuremberg. And after the trial of Nuremberg, and then after Tokyo, they put into place, under the leadership of the UN, some special tribunals, Rwanda, Yugoslavia, but there were regional or there were special courts. And it is in 2002 that for the first time in the history of the international justice system that people could put together like a court that represents most of the stakeholders coming from different races, different creeds, and different continents. People were hoping that the ICC was going to bring justice to the victimizers, bring justice to the victims, and also tell justice, in order to condemn the victimizers. But after 12 years of existence, we realized that most of the people that have been tried at the International Criminal Court, unfortunately, many of them are from Africa. Out of 9,000 complaints, most of the cases, Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Ivory Coast, and then Gbagbo was the first sitting president, to be taken to the International Criminal Court. So this is one of the recent pictures, because he's been there since 2012, but his trial started on January 28, 2016. Now, how Gbagbo, a sitting president, a commander-in-chief of an army, how he found himself in the prison of the International Criminal Court, while we know that the International Criminal Court does not have any police, and the International Criminal Court does not have any military. Because in 2010, there was an electoral stalemate in the country. Gbagbo Laurent and the current president of the country, who was a challenger, who was seeking to become president, and who raised an army in 2002, and then who, when Gbagbo said that he won the election, the guy also said that he won the election. Both of them claimed to be the winners of the election. And then what happened? Mr. Ouattara decided, to lobby so that the UN and France and all the powers can get involved in the crisis on a military level to go and bomb the troops of Gbagbo Laurent, and Gbagbo Laurent was going to be captured. And then that's why the issue of the international intervention was very, very important in the case of Ivory Coast. Now, so the UN took that resolution 1975 because they said that they wanted to go and protect the civilians, as they argued that Gbagbo was killing his own people. And they went there, and then this is what they did. But it is not, even though they did that, we know that the idea of international intervention started based on my knowledge and my research since World War II. Now, for us, when we hear about international intervention, we think about, as Africans, we think about all the theories that were constructed by many prominent Europeans who thought, and you have certainly heard about Kipling, who talk about the white man burden, and then the idea to go that civilizing mission that the Europeans have, to go in the logic or in the rationale of social Darwinism to go and bring civilization to the backward people all over the world. Hernan Cortes wrote something about the need for them to go and protect the Indians, and we know how they went there and then they massacred Indians, and we know what Africa has experienced since the 16th century: slavery, colonialism, and different other systems that I will talk about. Now, for those two systems, we have the Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494, under the leadership of the Pope Alexander VI, that divided the globe into two parts. One like a Spanish sphere, and the other one a Portuguese sphere. Later on, 1884, we had the Berlin Conference, and always, for the last 500 years, the Europeans always found an opportunity to go and meddle or try to get involved in the affairs of others, particularly the Negroes who live in Africa. Now, this is an image when the UN, again, the United Nations, which was supposed to be neutral, because they said that Ouattara won, and they went there on the side of Mr. Ouattara's forces, and then this is an image of the bombing of the country. The gentleman in green is Gbagbo Laurent, and then the lady sitting next to him, that's his wife. As we speak, she is in prison in Ivory Coast, going from one trial to another trial, and Gbagbo is, as I said, on trial at The Hague. Why Gbagbo's trial is important is because something is happening on the continent of Africa. For the last 70 years, we saw the Bretton Woods institution, the IMF and World Bank, trying to implement policies, failed policy, one after the other. But recently, under the leadership of Russia and China, they created what we call the BRICS Bank. BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, and then China and South Africa. South Africa is the only African country to be a part of the BRICS group, and they created the bank. And China is making like a strong move on the continent of Africa, and then there is a new race among those powers, the traditional European powers, and then the coming and emerging Asian powers led by China and Japan. So these gives the power of choice to to African leaders, and some today are considering the possibility, to trade with China and with other powers. And on the continent of Africa, there is a revival of Pan-Africanism. Quickly, in the crisis of Gabon, in the crisis of the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the election of Benin, and in the popular uprising that took out Blaise Compaoré, the very man who funded the rebellion and the war against Gbagbo, and who is finding a shelter now as we speak in Côte d'Ivoire. He was taken out of power by a popular uprising in Burkina Faso that claimed the values and the legacy of Thomas Sankara, who was killed by the same Blaise Compaoré. So today you can see, if you have the opportunity, for those who can read French, that in those 14 African countries that speak French on the continent of Africa, people want more freedom. And Gbagbo's trial came, to open the eyes to many, so that people can see the reality that is going on, that many people did not know that it was going on the continent of Africa. To go and bomb a leader and take him and put him in the prison, I will talk about that in a few. Now, the crisis of Ivory Coast, I spoke about the electoral stalemate. Of course, there was a problem of ethnicity. The feature, there are 5. The North versus the South. Those who want the chart of the Northerners, led by Ouattara, who is in power now, appointing all the people from his ethnic groups, and against those who were thinking about Ivoirité, which is about Ivorianness. But at the same time, that concept seemed to exclude some people who are parents who come from another part of the country. And we have violence, I mentioned that, and neocolonialism, I'm going to talk about that quickly. The involvement of France, a former colonial master, involved in the crisis of Ivory Coast. 4 steps, if I can remember to share that with you. The first one, when in 2002 the rebels attacked Ivory Coast, and Gbagbo asked France, to intervene, because there is an agreement between Ivory Coast and France. If the country is attacked, France has the responsibility to go and protect the country and protect the president. They've told Gbagbo, no, it was an internal crisis, while we knew that the rebels were coming from Burkina Faso, even though there were some Ivorians among them. First way for the French to undermine Gbagbo. Second, the Marcoussis Agreement, January 2003, they undermine all, the attempts, for Africans to solve the issue in Togo, in Dakar, in several parts, under the leadership of Chirac in France. They gathered the representative of Ivory Coast and some other people, and over there, they signed an agreement, or they forced Gbagbo to sign an agreement, and to appoint a prime minister from the rebels group. And this is how they legitimized, the rebellion in the country. Second step. Third one, there was, in 2004, Gbagbo decided to go and free the country, and in another part of the country, and somehow the French said that, Gbagbo killed French 9 soldiers, and then the people were, who went to do the bombing were from Belarusia, and then all of a sudden they arrested them, they disappeared, but France went after Gbagbo 30 to 50 times, moving towards the presidential palace to try and overthrow Gbagbo. Gbagbo was saved by a massive human shield of his supporters. The last one was, when they realized that, they have done everything they could, the only thing that they could do was to go and then take the French soldiers and French helicopters, support the rebels in the 21st century, in the age of information, to go and do a war against a sovereign nation. These are the 4 steps that we can use to talk about how neocolonialism was displayed under the leadership of French, and also we can add the United Nations. Now, when we know all those things, and when the ICC decided to go and then try to do any investigation, we were hoping that they will try to be fair and try to investigate all crimes, because let me be clear. It was a war. Then there were crimes committed on both sides in the country. I'm not saying that Gbagbo was an angel, and then no, I'm not saying that. There were crimes committed on both sides, but when the ICC goes to Ivory Coast, the ICC could not deliver true justice because the ICC is part of a global international structure, and the ICC is in collusion with the United Nations, and the ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda now, and yesterday it was Moreno Ocampo from Argentina. They seem to have some interest that tie them, to Mr. Ouattara, who is serving the interests of the neo-colonial forces. So they did what in Ivory Coast? A selective prosecution. And then if you do a selective prosecution, then of course you cannot be impartial. So there are two articles in the Treaty of Rome, the Article 53 and the Article 61, that they reveal the bias or the power they give to the prosecutor to decide whether or not to prosecute or to do some investigation. So in the case of Ivory Coast, Moreno Ocampo and Fatou Bensouda, the two prosecutors of the ICC, so far, 5 years after the electoral crisis in the country, and then 14 years after after the civil war, the beginning of the civil war in Ivory Coast since 2002, they think that they haven't found enough evidence to go and prosecute Mr. Ouattara or Soro Guillaume, the Speaker of the House, who was the leader of the rebellion, or many other Ouattara's warlords. And we know something I will say so that we can go and I can talk about the significance of race and then of other things related to the crisis in Ivory Coast. The hallmark of the controversy surrounding the ICC, and I said it, it is the crisis in Ivory Coast. You might have heard about Kenya or Sudan or the Democratic Republic of Congo. But in like a few days before the fall of Gbagbo, Mr. Ouattara's warlords coming from the northern part of the country, moving towards the western part of the country, supposedly Gbagbo's stronghold, even though we know that Gbagbo finally was a leader who was some representative in different parts of the country, even though he was weak in the northern part of the country. They burning villages, burning farms, and killing people. In my birthplace, Duekoue, Duekoue, in one day, they killed more than 1,000 people. And those who did that, they're in the country, and the ICC so far is not doing anything about that. When I was in Ghana in March, and I was at international conference, and then Fatou Bensouda, the prosecutor, was there. And she was there at the inaugural ceremony. And then I asked her, so when are you going to go after those people? The best thing she could say, oh yeah, we're not going to rely on media reports. And that was I don't want to how can I say that? I don't want to use like a bad expression. But anyway, she said it, and then people know that she could not do more better than that because she's serving a system and she's serving like some particular interest. Now, I spoke about Gustave Mounier here, and let me talk about, yes, this is the Duekoue, the massacre of Duekoue, more than 1,000 people, that the image of Gbagbo captured here different. The light-skinned boy you see over there, that's Gbagbo's son. His first wife was from France. And then this boy was beaten that day, and you will see some images that it's online everywhere. How they treated Gbagbo, abused Gbagbo's wife. And Gbagbo's wife, during a trial, she said that, I'm talking about the former first lady. She said herself, so I'm quoting her, that she was, how did she say it? Because if I do not say it right, so it's going to give a different meaning. She said that she escaped multiple sexual assault. And she said it herself. And then all the things are there, but the international system is not looking at that. So this is what happened. The gentleman you see here, that's the former governor of the West African Bank, beaten. They put him naked. And this is a public picture. And then I took it for you to see. And this is it cannot mobilize the International Criminal Court. That is the first lady, surrounded by the warlords. And for them, it was like a trophy. This is the first lady, former first lady, Simone Gbagbo here. And this one was a minister of foreign affairs. Okay, sorry. A minister of foreign affairs, a minister of interior. And then these are some of the dignitaries of Gbagbo's regime. This is how they were treated. With the complicity of Barack Obama, and with the complicity of France, with the complicity of those who think that they are trying to bring democracy in the world. Now, why Gbagbo's case of faith is so important for to us? There are some people saying, no, it was not about Pan-Africanism, it was about democracy. Gbagbo lost the election, he should have left. I said that I could not say that for sure that Gbagbo lost or won. I cannot tell you who won the election. But I can tell you that the result that they gave, the results were fixed, because there is no way during the second round that the turnout could be 81%. This is not possible. And I have some documents. And then, but that's not the case. This is what I want to talk about. What I call the historical memory for Africa and also for the world. Gbagbo's faith awakened many African masses, because when we think about Zumba and Zumbi, those who put together the community of free slaves in Brazil, and assaulted by the European enslavers over 100 years, and finally defeated. And Gbagbo's faith reminds of the deportation of Samori Touré, who resisted against colonial penetration, and also it reminds of the deportation of Béhanzin, who was from the kingdom of Dahomey, taken to Gabon. Gbagbo's faith reminds of also about the deportation of Toussaint Louverture, the leader of Haiti, and then the humiliation and assassination and tragedies of many African leaders. This is one, Patrice Lumumba, 1961, the leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then the same thing that we see with the UN involved in that crisis, taking side and destroying a leader, this already happened 50 years ago. But for us, sometimes we think, okay, Lumumba, that was 50 years ago, we didn't have any image, maybe a few pictures. But to see vivid image, and I did not bring like some videos here. You can do that if you want to do more research. Vivid image of a president captured. And then, of course, we think about what happened to Lumumba. That was in 1961. Sylvanus Olympio from Togo. He wanted to create his currency in Togo. The French said, no, you cannot do that. When he said that he was going to do it, he said, no problem. When do you want to do it? He gave the date. The night before, he was assassinated in a coup d'etat. And they put somebody there who did not finish elementary school, that the French supported for more than 35 years in Togo. The Eyadema father, and now his son is in power since 1963 and 1965. Mandela, the most popular one, he taken into prison, I believe, in June 12, 1964 for 27 years. And later on, they were going to talk about Nelson Mandela as the father of humanity. For us black people, we think about the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965. And we think about February 24, 1966, the Kwame Nkrumah, the father of Ghana independence, one of the pioneers of Pan-Africanism, and who struggled and fought for the decolonization of the continent of Africa, who fought against apartheid, and who was a great leader undermined by the US and the British, and he was overthrown February 24, 1966. After he was overthrown, we could see Ghana entered like a chronic instability for more than 3 decades. And then we have to see, or 2 decades, we have to see Rawlings coming to power to try and fix a little bit Ghana. But you can imagine how Ghana could not continue on its path to progress because the one who had the vision was taken out of power. And then April 4, 1968, Dr. King. And so here there was Bianze, deported to Gabon, the leader of Gabon. So having said what I just said, the question is this. Are we going to say that the ICC is a racist institution or the ICC is not a racist institution? My answer is this. They did not put together the International Criminal Court on the basis of a structure or institutionalized racism like they did during the Black Code or during slavery and colonialism. But, like Amber said, the question here, who is punishable, who is targeted, and why? And then who is targeting who? And these are the questions that made me say that even though the ICC is not built or created as a racist institution, the way its modus operandi demonstrate that the International Criminal Court is a racist, is pursuing like a racist agenda. Because racism, and then you did that with your professor, it can be about a hierarchy of races, one superior to others. It's also about discrimination, and it's also about what? Prejudice. And then there is a clear prejudice against Africans. And then, so this is one thing I wanted to say before I show you this one. Okay, this is it. Amber, this is what you were talking about. So, since the 16th century, the Europeans have put into place different structures in different spheres and different sectors. And the one that was missing in the field of international justice was the International Criminal Court. You can see here for the imperial states, US, Britain, France, Germany, and some other European countries. Most of them were involved in slavery, and they were involved in colonialism, they were involved in apartheid, and today they are involved in neocolonialism. How do they operate in the world, and particularly in Africa? Military bases. NATO. France has several bases like what? In Ivory Coast, in Gabon, in different parts in Djibouti. And then recently we have the African Command, created by your President George Bush. And they want to be in Africa for what? And because they want to preserve and advance the interests of America, and then this is serving the interests of American imperialism and Western power imperialism. On the level of the UN, I said it already, the United Nations has been militarized, and they went to a sovereign nation to go and do a war. And then when the ICC is trying to question the crimes committed by Gbagbo's forces, the International Criminal Court is not questioning the crimes committed by Ouattara, or it is not questioning the crimes committed by the UN, and it is not questioning the crimes committed by the French troops. The same way the ICC is not questioning the crimes committed by American forces in Iraq, in Afghanistan, or in different other parts of the world. On the finance level, and I said it already in the beginning, you have the IMF, you have the World Bank, and the CFA zone. CFA zone is controlled by the French. The money that we use in those 14 African countries, it is printed in France. And then there are two central banks. In the board of each of those banks, France has some representatives there to preserve and to maintain the interests of France. And now the World Trade Organization, and even the scholastic tools, universities and think tanks. If you see some of the writings on Gbagbo, and then I'm from Ivory Coast, and we know what is happening in our country, and you see people writing, and you go 50 years in the past, you look at what they wrote about Kwame Nkrumah, you look at what they wrote about Patrice Lumumba, and you look at how they write, maybe like 200 or 300 years ago, it is the same rationale, the same logic, to demonstrate the superiority of white who have maybe like the divine mission, to promote justice or freedom and so on and so on. And whoever goes against them, they will tell you that either that you are losing your mind or that you do not know in which world that you are operating. So this is what we saw with those universities. Of course, there are many justice lovers and freedom seekers like Amber and many of you, and we will see things from a different perspective. But those who were making more noise on the question of Ivory Coast, and today they became so quiet because what can they say? There is no democracy in Ivory Coast. Mr. Ouattara spoke on in December 2015 to announce a new constitution since December to now, 9 months. He cannot even come with a project so that people can see what is in that constitution. But his surrogates are on the ground. Vote the new constitution. Vote the new constitution. America is quiet. France is quiet because Ouattara is implementing neoliberal policies, selling some state companies, and then even the bridge, the third one that we have, built by the French, and that this is what they wanted. If the number of cars is inferior to the estimate, the state of Ivory Coast has to give money to the French company that built the bridge in Ivory Coast. This is the reality in our country. Anyway, so same thing with the civil society, and then now the international. So when we look at the global governance, what I call the wheel of imperialism, we can see that the ICC fits like in that global structure that demonstrates, that preserves, that advances the interests of Western power, white supremacy, and that's why we can say, after the demonstration that I just did, that the ICC is pursuing as a racist modus operandi. And how many minutes did I talk?
You have a couple.
No, that's it. I'm finished. Thank you, people. I told Amber, she said, you want to talk 1 hour? I said, no, I'm going to talk to Americans 1 hour with my accent. 35 minutes, most. Okay, we did it.
Well,
any question?
I wanted to make sure it's a very complex history and story, and I wanted to make sure that we got it.
No problem. I think I tried. Mm-hmm.
So, thank you so much, Dr. Legoke, for that really compelling talk. It's really hard to see those images.
I'm sorry, I should have warned you. Gruesome, right?
No, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't show them to us.
Yeah, but the guy,
acknowledging that.
Amber, I'm sorry. The guy you saw the face, when they arrested, he came with a white cloth. When they wanted to arrest Bible, I forgot to tell you that. He came, like two people, like in if I can use that word, in civilized world. Say, white cloth, please do not shoot. Right? Do not shoot. They took him, they arrested him, they put him in the truck. And in the car, like that gun like this, they shot the guy. They did not take him to the hospital. You can imagine the pain that he has endured, and he died the same day. So I'm sorry. I should have told you. I should have warned you. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean that you needed to apologize. I just meant that I think we're digesting, and I think it's a very heavy story. And I want to make sure that we understood the history and the particular actors. I mean, you didn't, maybe you could just say a couple more things about who Alassane Ouattara is and his relationship, what his former profession was, and right. What his relationship with France is. And Côte d'Ivoire as well is not, not all former French colonies are created equal. Côte d'Ivoire had a very special role in perpetuating the neo-colonial system of France, and it was sort of a hub. And for the French to lose, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, But that's why we need to understand the details to understand that this is a historical reality. It's not a conspiracy theory at all. So maybe if you could say some about
Mr. Ouattara.
Ouattara and, I mean, the geopolitical strategies in the region. You mentioned Thomas Sankara. I don't think that everybody knows who he is, or Blaise Compaoré. And, I mean, we got a sense from those of us who are the students in the class, looking at Amina Mama's article, for example, we got a sense of the complexity of sort of the movement of mercenaries across borders between Sierra Leone and Liberia. And that was also the case in Cote d'Ivoire, where mercenaries on both sides from other conflicts were then integrated into this conflict.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ouattara, the current president of the country, it is a very complex situation, and I'm going to talk about that. And thank you, Amber. I wanted to go fast, but I think I mentioned him, but you're right. I need to put just 2 minutes or 3 on the guy. Mr. Ouattara, according to what people say, he was born in Ivory Coast. And if his age is real, he was born in 1942, January 1st. Usually in Africa, when they don't know when you were born, they put January 1st. But I do not have any proof to say that he was not born on January 1st, 1942. At the time, Ivory Coast and Upper Volta, that was another colony, French colony, were a member of the West French Africa, were a part of the same colony. They brought together, the two colonies. No, a major portion of the colony from Upper Volta to Ivory Coast, they put them together. But they separated them in 1947. And then when Ouattara was 11, 42 plus 11, his parents coming from Upper Volta, believed to be born in Ivory Coast, at age 11, he went with his uncle to Upper Volta. So from 1953 to 1990, he was known as a citizen of Upper Volta. That became Burkina Faso in 1984, when a young captain Thomas Sankara rose to power, and he did a revolution. And admires him. Many people like Thomas Sankara. So when Ouattara now came, Houphouët-Boigny, the former president of the country, old, and then somehow Ouattara became a prime minister. So when he became a prime minister of Ivory Coast in 1990, there was a debate, a serious debate in the country, that the guy is not from the land, is not from the country. So it divided the entire nation. And then because the country is Ivory Coast is it's a melting pot. It's a little bit like a small America in Africa, because people from Burkina, Mali, Senegal, from Syria, Lebanon, all those people, even some white, married, some Ivorians. So there is a serious melting pot, and I call it a microcosm, or the microcosm of the United States of Africa. So when he said that he wanted to run for president, people said, no, you cannot. He said, yes, I can. People said, no, you cannot. He said, yes, I can. You cannot. He said, I'm going to show you how I can. And you better not prevent me from running for president. And then it became a serious debate. And the president who came after Houphouët, his name is Bédié, he conceived that concept of ivoirité, Ivorianness, that says that to be president of the country, your father, you have to be Ivorian, or your father and your mother have to be Ivorian. So this divided the country. I was young, but later on, I said that even though Mr. Ouattara did not tell the truth about his nationality, for the sake of peace, people should have let him run for president. And I said that everywhere I went. So he decided to go now when he was eliminated. He could not run for president. In 2000, Gbagbo became president. And as soon as Gbagbo became president, he unleashed his warlords and supporters in the country to ask for a new election. Many more people were killed. And in January 2001, his supporters in the army who deserted, they did a coup. 2001, they failed. And September 19, 2002, and they came back again. And this time, they did not overthrow Gbagbo, but they divided the country into two. The support they had from Blaise Compaoré, who in the meantime became a puppet of neocolonialism in the region, and he was funding rebellion here and there. He was involved in the war in Sierra Leone. He was involved in the war in Liberia. So this is, who Mr. Ouattara is. And then later on, his wife, she's French, and she has some strong connections. And then they put all the power they could together. He studied here in Pennsylvania, and then of course some Americans supported him too. And then they realized, they thought that Gbagbo was the bad guy that they needed to destroy, because Gbagbo was unpredictable and he was not serving the interests of colonial powers. So this is, I don't know if I answered the question, or if there are some pieces I left out.
Yeah, so as far as neocolonialism goes, and France's involvement, what is it that they're trying to get out of, this influence or neocolonialism in Ivory Coast? Is it just the history? You said democracy, but that doesn't seem to be true. It seems like there's some form of democracy.
Okay, you want to know what neocolonialism is looking for, like in Africa?
In Ivory Coast.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
what are the French interests?
No, yeah,
Concretely, materially, what do they gain?
Yeah, it's the same thing that they did during slavery. It's the same thing they did during colonialism. They're going after profit. They want to exploit the raw materials. And we have, for instance, in Ivory Coast, we have cocoa. And Ivory Coast is the biggest producer of cocoa. But if I tell you that the first cocoa factory built in the country to manufacture cocoa, it was last year. And 6 million euro. This is nothing. And then all the shares belong to the French. So in other words, you have cocoa, you should not exploit it, you should not manufacture it. But we, the French, we will do it. So that you guys can be the consumers. So this is just cocoa. Same thing in the banking sector in the hands of the French. We talk about the port of Abidjan in the hands of Bolloré. We talk about the bridge, the third bridge I was talking about, in the hands of the French. We talk about water, electricity, and the telephone in the hands of the French. Or guess what? In the sector of telecommunication, the landline sector, they took it, and then they were like that, the majority of the shares. And then for the sector of mobile telephony, they prevented the state of Ivory Coast to get involved in that sector. And then the France Telecom, they created a company called Orange, and that is controlling most of the money, like in that sector. And it is, and since Gbagbo to now, I think a couple of months ago, Mr. Ouattara himself realized that no, he cannot continue like that. So they decided to negotiate with the French so that they can combine the landline company that is in the hands of the French, that we call Côte d'Ivoire Telecom, but they control the majority of the shares. And they wanted to combine Côte d'Ivoire Telecom with Orange, which is believed to be a private company in the hands of the French. And Orange linked to Côte d'Ivoire Telecom. They want to bring them together. Guess what? They said that they will give only 31% of the shares to the state of Ivory Coast. This is what they're doing. So, if you come and you want to change a little bit that, Sylvanus Olympio or Lumumba, Gbagbo, this is what they've been doing. Sometimes I tell people, black people or white people, in Africa, we are not that stupid. And it's not that, of course, there are many things that denounce. And Amber, sometimes she's the one defending, you're too hard on your people. But sometimes, we had some people who wanted to do the right thing. Nkrumah was one of them. Thomas Sankara was one of them. Gbagbo, even though he's not a Pan-Africanist, he's an African nationalist. And he wanted the sovereignty. He meant to free the country. And he made some mistakes, and then they used that, and they went after him. And they put somebody there, and they're taking everything they want from the country. Same thing with Gabon. Today, there was an election in Gabon. They put somebody there who was in power for 42 years. Bongo. And the Gabon has oil. But the population of Gabon, less than 2 million people. If you go to Gabon, poverty in Gabon, the resources exploited by the French. And they put, after the father died, they put the son there. 7 years. The day the son said, hey, we need to change this. All of a sudden he became a dictator. But in 2009, when they say he won the election, everyone knew that he lost the election. But now that he is trying, to bring the Chinese, and he's trying, to open up, the economic market of Gabon, they are going after him. This is what we live in Africa every day. In Benin, I forgot to mention that there was an election, I think this year or last year, I think this year. There is a guy, he was a business person. He's not one of my favorites, the current president. And he was there, people say, and then there was another guy, a light-skinned father, maybe a father, like mother, wife, white, and he was with the French. And then one day, like a very public setting, the guy did not know people that this was going to kill him. And he was demonstrating how Africa belongs, to France and to the European. And then the guy, the French, they were pushing the guy to become the president of Benin. The entire nation of Benin said, no, it's not going to happen here. This is how Lionel Zinsou, the light-skinned guy, lost the election in Benin. Talon, who was like a business person, who's not like a great politician, now he's the president of Benin. 2 days ago, Bolloré, the French group that is controlling most of the ports in West Africa, they wanted to go and take the port of Cotonou. And he said, no, we're not going to give you that port. So even the leaders that we do not appreciate so much in Africa today, for the sake of their own survival, or maybe because it's the trend, they try, to use, they try, to embody some kind of new nationalism. So this is what is happening, and I am a part of the process. And so anywhere I can go to talk about what is happening in Africa, I do it. Not because I hate the French, but because they have done so many bad things, to the continent of Africa. I know there are other Europeans, but right now we are suffering under the neocolonialism of the French, of France as a former colonial master that does not want to leave the continent of Africa, that does not want to leave the resources of Africa in the hands of Africans. So that's the answer to your question. Yes?
Could you elaborate a little bit further as to what your personal research and work is doing to counter this narrative? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I love that question. I love your question too. Okay. When I was young, I became a journalist. I believe in justice and freedom. So when I was a student, my generation, we struggled for multi-party system. And I worked I forgot to tell you that, I worked for Gbagbo when he was the leader of the opposition for 4 years in his newspaper. And then I have a strained, believe it or not, relationship with Gbagbo when he was in the opposition. So then I left his newspaper, even though I continued to support his struggle, even though I have distanced myself from some of his positions. And I can mention some of them if you want. So when I came to America, I wanted to study. My American dream for me is to come here and have a PhD. It was not easy. And America gave me that opportunity. And then when I had the opportunity to study, I wanted to understand, I want to understand what was happening to Africa. And then I loved Nkrumah, I loved Thomas Sankara, so I decided to study Pan-Africanism. And then when I studied Pan-Africanism, I did not want to just talk about, yes, black power. At the end, we don't know how to propose people how to eat. So I wanted to study regional economic integration. And then I did that from a Pan-African perspective. And I studied Cheikh Anta Diop, Kwame Nkrumah, and so and so. Now, to come to your end question now, I wanted to be one of the people to articulate a new dispensation of Pan-Africanism. Because the problem that we have in Africa is this. One thing, and everywhere I go, I said this, one thing that I see here in America, and also in some other European countries, even China, you guys have a vision. It can be a vision of domination, but you have a vision. You see what I'm saying, right? So the person who goes to the Olympics, when he's doing that, he wants to contribute to the greatness of America. People who do Hollywood, they want to contribute to the greatness of America. Some people who go to school who come with theories, they want to come with new paradigms that America can use to continue to dominate the world. When people invent internet and everyone uses internet, it is part of that American vision. In Africa, we are not suffering too much because of poverty. We are suffering because of the loss and the lack of a strong continental vision. So as a researcher, I wanted to contribute to try and give and come with a narrative around which we can try to talk about the issues in Africa and also advance like a new programmatic agenda that can stand upon a novel articulation of Pan-Africanism. You get it? Yesterday, Nkrumah spoke about Pan-Africanism from the socialist perspective. Thomas Sankara did it. Even Julius Nyerere, who wanted to talk about Pan-Africanism, he based that on Ujamaa, but he called it African socialism. I call the novel articulation of Pan-Africanism that I'm promoting, it stands upon an African value system, which is what Ubuntu. Ubuntu is about humanness. We are. I am because we are. And then when I read, the more I read, the more I realize that is the key. Somehow, I don't know how our ancestors could not see it. And then maybe because of the historical context, they embrace socialism. You read Cheikh Anta Diop, The African Origin of Civilization. In that book, he was talking about how people were called in ancient Egypt. And there is a word called Nti, or sometimes some other people write Nuit, like Nwit or Nti. It means person, since ancient Egypt. So today when you see in the word Ubuntu, the singular is what Muntu, the plural is what Bantu, or the plural is what Abantu, that leads to that vision or that philosophy. And guess what? The Europeans have capitalism. The Asians, they have Confucianism. We, Africa, need to come with an endogenous value system. That's my research. Doing this, we reclaim our identity. We recover our past, and we can project ourselves in the future. But around the values of sharing, compassion, unity, oneness, and togetherness. And all those values are a part of Pan-Africanism. So this is my contribution. Today, if I die, I know that I have tried a little bit, to come with an African narrative. But not like people say, oh yeah, we don't want what the West are doing, and they don't propose anything. So this is what I will say.
I was wondering if you would talk. Oh, there was a hand. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Drew. I couldn't see you.
That's okay. Looking at the content media propaganda, you mentioned that you were a journalist. I know that a lot of these sources, they're on like the BBC, France 24, RFI, you can listen to them inside of Africa as well. and they're coming from this, European and Western perspective. So what influence do you think this Western media has on the consciousness of
What's your name?
Drew?
Drew.
Yeah.
Man, the impact is so powerful. So powerful. There is a, I forgot, I wanted to mention that, I don't know why I forgot. Maybe I'm going to send the link to Amber if she hasn't seen that, and then, so that she can share that in class. It's I think a Swiss guy. His name, I don't know, it's Charles or Genscher, he's in Switzerland. And he has a presentation he called La Guerre Masquée. Yeah, so if you say powerful, how people do a war, and then using propaganda and media. And when I was a child, I remember every time on radio, Aldo Moro, remember those radical leftists in Italy, Aldo Moro, who is that Aldo Moro? And then you grow up thinking that Aldo Moro and the radical leftists in Italy were bad people. But it was in the context of the Cold War, you see? So of course they will come and they do that propaganda on a consistent basis, to make you believe that, this one is a good guy and this one is a bad guy. And then even people who believe in freedom, justice, sometimes, they underestimate the power of the media. And because when you have, because America has a status of world power, and then the president and then the politicians or the business people, they are what? News makers, right? I'm here talking, maybe we have 15 people in the room or 20, and I'm pleased, I'm honored. But if you hear, for instance, that, Bill Gates is around, like the entire city goes, Bill Gates is around, let's go. So imagine one day Bill Gates say, you know what, I believe that Drew is a good person. All the people who love Bill Gates, at least 80%, they're going to believe that you're a good person, even though you may be like me, like a bad person. So anyway, so these are the things. So the media propaganda is very powerful, and they shape the minds of Africans. And our job is not easy. That's why, thank God, people invented internet. So we use that, there's space, and we try to take advantage on that, to try and connect with people. In the 60s, in Nkrumah and all those people, they need to gather in a room to talk about Pan-Africanism. Today, thanks to Facebook, there are some people who can see what we're doing. And this is how, step by step, things are changing.
I just have a question. It's probably merging these two questions here, but as far as creating this indigenous value system,
The what?
the indigenous value system that you spoke about, how exactly do you see that being disseminated or broadcast across the whole of Africa?
Okay, yeah, there's a very thing because I'm so content to be here, so I keep forgetting pieces of information. So when you read about Ubuntu, you will be surprised. Because that concept, you can see that in at least like 400 African Bantu languages. 400. People say there are 2,000 languages, but we talk about the sub-Saharan Africa. So, to give you an example, in Uganda they call it Abantu, right? And then in Lingala, Central Africa, they call it Bomoto. And in Burkina Faso, the Mosi people, in the language More, they call that Burkindi. So when Thomas Sankara was changing the name of his country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, that Burkina Faso land in Malenke, Burkina people of right people, righteous people, it was like it was drawing from that Burkindi philosophy. So Burkindi, Bomoto, Abantu, Untu, Umuhu, you have that in many. So I believe that when you come and you talk to Africans and you say, we want to promote scientific socialism. You're going to explain what is scientific socialism, right? First of all, those two words are what? European words, French or English or Spanish. You're going to explain to people. But when you say Bomoto, that's a reality they know. But maybe they haven't embraced it. And the leaders haven't used that, to articulate how to construct a society. Because what I do in my research, We want to deconstruct the democratic system or the African state. We want to deconstruct that state. The way we do in politics, we can take into account the positive aspect of European democratic model, for instance, civil society, for instance, political parties, right, or elections. I think that these are very important elements, but at the same time, the idea of the winner takes all, I don't think that it can work in Africa. And because in the past, people were trying to build the society around the value of consensus. And there is a way to build a new consensus today to reduce tribalism, to reduce civil war, to reduce religious wars, and so and so. You get it? So yeah, so that's why I am excited about that endogenous African value system. And the more I read, the more I realize that this is what we need in Africa today.
So I'm wondering how you would prefer to see justice within the Ivory Coast, because the ICC is really Western in their view of legal justice and doesn't address justice in any other forms. And you were talking about how there are other people that should be held accountable for their actions, so I was wondering how they should be held accountable and what that structure should look like.
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I'm going to tell you, and I'm not trying to be humble, but it's a difficult question. I'm going to tell you why. Because I, as an African nationalist, as a Pan-Africanist, I don't even want Mr. Ouattara to go to the ICC, in principle, right? And this is what we were doing. We were thinking that if we have our own issues, we can try to resolve them in Ivory Coast. But he is the one who decided to take Gbagbo to the ICC. Many people told him now that was a mistake, but he did it anyway. So, if the ICC wants to live up to its core functions, the ICC has, as it started to go after Mr. Ouattara, Mr. Sorogio, and some Ouattara warlords. If the ICC does that, even though in principle I do not want our leaders to be there, we can talk about the beginning of justice. But it has been already 5 years. And it's going to be difficult for them to do it. And then that's why we were thinking about restorative justice or redemptive justice. It happened in South Africa. Why the same Europeans were so happy to see Mandela, that were happy when Mandela forgave the racist regime in South Africa, and pushing, take Gbagbo to the Hague. And they were the France and America, they were doing that for what? So that's why we talk about that, the racist dimension of the way the ICC is functioning. Yeah, because in the Ivory Coast, when the first president was there, Houphouët Boigny, we used to have our ways of doing things. We used to have the National Council, right? It's one-party system, and then one day it will bring everyone, farmers, youth, women, and civil servants, and people will talk and discuss, and then it will take into account some of the decision. This how it could forgive some people, and so and so. Gbagbo came, he did amnesty, but Ouattara decided to do punitive justice, and the ICC followed him in that, and now it is too late for him to try and do real justice in the country. Yes, sir.
What are the exact accusations as to prosecuting this man?
I've said human rights violation, war crime, crime against humanity. But now, if you want to talk about some specific cases, yes. They say that there were 7 women who were killed in March 2011. And we knew around the celebration of Women's Day, all of a sudden, 7 women were killed. I'm not saying that it is true or false, but many people will tell you that it was it was not true, and that people were even faking it. But our possible next president of the United States of America, Hillary, she was talking against Gbagbo, they killed 8 women. There was Gbagbo has to pay for that. And later on today, they cannot come and demonstrate that Gbagbo's forces really killed those women. And since December 16, 2010, Soro Guillaume, the leader of the rebellion, and Ouattara, when they were in the Gulf Hotel, they decided that they were going to go and free the national TV because it was controlled by Gbagbo. If you see the images, I do not want to, it's not gruesome, but I do not want us to waste too much time on that. But believe me, I cannot come here and tell you something that is not correct. Not because I have done so much research, but because I believe in truth. So that day, Ouattara's warlords, they were carrying like a weapon of mass destruction, and with some other people, like in a so-called like a peaceful protest, and they went on national TV. Many people died. That particular incident, the ICC is using that against Gbagbo. The images are there on YouTube. So yeah, these are some of the cases that they are holding against him wrongly. Yes, sir.
The philosophy of Ubuntu sounds really exciting and compelling. Thank you for sharing on that. Trying to kind of piece together and understand, it sounds like the ICC is racist, yes? Are you saying it's racist because it's an agent of neocolonialism, and neocolonialism is racist?
Yes, neocolonialism is based on racism, and it is an agent of what? Of neocolonialism.
Right.
And like Amber said, maybe she will talk about that. They perpetuate that system of European, like Eurocentric understanding of the world based on what? White supremacy. And then you cannot prosecute America. Americans they talk about American exceptionalism. You cannot prosecute an American citizen before the International Criminal Court, but you can prosecute Africans. Why? Because you think that you're superior.
I'm from Zimbabwe. Oh, can I answer that question? Okay. I'm from Zimbabwe, and I also have done research on Ubuntu and in South Africa specifically. And I'm wondering what you think, because the philosophy itself, in essence, has become a colonialized philosophy and has been overused by the Western world to simplify what simple-minded Africans think, and but also using it to trivialize and claim it as their own philosophy, claim it as their own, when a lot of Southern Africans and Africans pejoratively do not use the terminology anymore. So what do you think is the strategy to reintroducing it and then reclaiming it?
Yeah, thank you very much. When I was in South Africa a couple of weeks ago, and then I was so shocked that what you just said, that somebody told me that, oh yeah, the concept has been bastardized. That's the word they use there. Overused, people who do not believe in it, and then those South Africans who believe that, now that they're free from apartheid, that the state has to take care of them, right? They do not have to work anymore. Yes, that's the wrong way of understanding Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is about what? Individual responsibility and then communal responsibility. You see what I'm saying? So some of the values that we have here, but the Republicans or even Democrats, they talk about the individual responsibility. But it is a part of our understanding. That's why they say that a person is a person through other person. It is when I do something right and I know that I can be my brother's keeper, then people can say, you know what, that person has Burkindi, or that person has what? Ubuntu. So now, the question you asked in the beginning, this is my contribution, and my friends and I, we are working to solidify and consolidate that narrative, and then we're going to try and publish. And then I'm in contact with some people who I've introduced you to. The guy is a priest. He's from Burundi. Wonderful. I can send you his dissertation on that. Wonderful work. So some people are doing some nice work, but thank God, I'm not South African. I am West African, right? And I come from a Francophone world. And then we are going to use and promote it. And then when I go back to Ivory Coast, we're going to have seminars and workshops and lectures and conferences so that people can understand that instead of going and look for capitalism and socialism, those two doctrines failed the people. for some reason, historical or some other for greed or whatever, we have something that we can use and then polish and then to teach that to people in schools and people you will see. And it's coming. And because when you talk about Sankara Bukindi, people understand. You talk about Mandela Ubuntu, people understand. That's what I'm saying. So this is what we're doing. And I was in Philadelphia over the weekend, and then I have a similar conversation about Ubuntu. And many Black Americans were there who are scientific socialists and who are so attached to that ideology. Many of them they haven't opened up themselves yet. To that Ubuntu concept is coming. It's upon us to try and promote it. Thanks to Facebook, and then thanks to Twitter, and thanks to many other things.
Yeah.
I just super quick question. I was just curious what his wife was being charged for.
Same thing. Crimes against humanity. That they robbed the bank. When they said that Ouattara won the election, and then Babu wanted to use that, that the representation, the branch of that West African bank, they said that he stole money, but some other people thought that it was the right thing to do. So this one thing, and crimes against humanity, and then that she wanted to. We have an expression in French that she was troubling like a state order, like I can't see if you want. She wanted to do a coup d'état, something like that. So these are things they are holding against Gbagbo's wife, Simone Gbagbo.
There's this understanding that the Gbagbos and then also Blé Goudé, you didn't really speak about, were somehow cultivating ethnic hatred, and that led to the rise of militia activity, who then perpetuated these alleged crimes. But I mean the contestations around whether or not the women were killed in the march is really important, and to me it's so great that Dr. Lagoki mentioned that Hillary Clinton would speak on behalf of the 7 women killed in the march, because it's very typical of liberal feminism or humanitarian militarism to position itself as intervening on behalf of particularly women of color, and usually against, saving them somehow against men of color. And there's been a lot of work on this, particularly in Afghanistan, the way that sort of discourse of saving women of color has been mobilized. But as I'm listening to your conversation, some other things occur to me that might be important to understand what happened in Côte d'Ivoire. So at approximately the same time, we had massive revolutions across North Africa. We had the Arab Spring, so Tunisia, Egypt, and then later Libya were all sort of experiencing massive social transformations at this time, and those were perceived as very dangerous for neo-colonial powers. And so there's a lot of scholarship that looks much more specifically, in English at least. Horace Campbell and Maximilian Fort have really good books that look at the no-fly zone in Libya and the militaristic intervention in Libya, and eventually the assassination of Gaddafi. But that was going on at approximately the same time that this contested presidential election and then the violence in Côte d'Ivoire. And so what happened was, importantly, Côte d'Ivoire was obscured in international media, and much of the reporting was grossly oversimplified. Much of African conflicts get sort of excused as the North versus South Christian versus Muslim, and that was the same understanding that most of the BBC and France 24, although France 24, you know, sometimes they would invite like Khalid Subiala and other Pan-Africanists who had more nuanced understandings of what was going on, but for the most part, it was a very simplistic understanding of the conflict, and Gbagbo was presented uniformly as this dictatorial figure who was trying to hang on to power. And then at the same time, you have, as I say, the neo-colonial forces being very worried by the developments across the continent. Let's see, I wanted to mention something else too. About media.
So, Namibia?
Yeah, I wanted to say something else about Drew's comment on the media, but it escapes me.
It's coming.
temporarily.
It's
Yeah,
going to come.
so it will come later, probably tonight.
Okay. So in the meantime, so this one is I should find his face. He's a British guy. He's a white man, and I call him my brother. So we met in Ghana, and we found ourselves in Namibia. And then the guy is serious. His name is David Hoyle. And then he published that 600-page book on the International Criminal Court. So if you want to know, it is in English, he's from England. If you want to know about, if you think that, you know, he did not talk too much about Ivory Coast in that book, but if you want to know how they operate, who funds them, where they get the money from, how the Europeans are using and manipulating the International Criminal Court, this is a perfect book for you. And some other people will tell you, no, you know, the ICC is good, you know, they just want to have a position there. And but this book is a very important one, and written by David Hoyle. Maybe one day if he's in town, yes, you know, I will, you know, it will be here. You will enjoy his presentation. So I just wanted to mention that to you.
Yeah, I remember. I wanted to follow up with the 7 women who, because, so there was allegations that the video of the protest, and then, you know, you sort of hear what sound like gunshots, and then screaming, and then, you know, women falling over. And so there's allegations that this was staged. But I never heard the names of the women.
Yeah, of course.
So the names of the women were never produced, which to me is the most troubling. If the women existed, we should have heard from their families. Their families should be testifying at The Hague, but they're not. And yet this is still being presented as fact. And then the use of social media, I mean, much of the allegations are based on, you know, radio interviews, sort of things that Blé Goudet has said on the radio that, you know, then we get clips of them, or these sorts of, you know, people recording scenes that really nothing is clear what's happening. So, I mean, the allegations against Blé Goudet and Gbagbo are so incredible.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what is more incredible is that the atrocities at Dokwe had been documented by the American Red Cross. There were, I mean, when he says people, there were villages burned, people were burned alive, and there are photos of corpses. There was a mass burial, and this happened when the so-called rebel forces in support of Alassane Ouattara were sweeping the country from the north to the southwest in order to take Abidjan, the capital city. Okay, and so most of these atrocities that were documented were problematically against people who were in support of Gbagbo. And so it really is quite a clear case, in fact, of neo-colonial intervention.
So thank you, my friend. So if you like we said, This is Massacre of Duque. You can put in any language, in Spanish, Portuguese, English, you put Massacre of Duque. You go in, I don't want to show you some images. You will see different types of links there, and you will be so shocked. The same media only the propaganda yesterday to present Gbagbo as that dictatorial figure, that Ouattara was like an angel, a Democrat. Now that it's like they think that, you know, somehow, maybe because they want to reduce the sense of guilt they have, we don't know why. But now you can, all the media, Nouvelle Observateur in France, Le Monde, Le Figaro, BBC, CNN, you can have different things on that. So in one day, more than 1,000 people killed by Ouattara's forces before the Abidjan to go and try and dislodge Gbagbo Laurent. So yes.
So I'm sitting here giggling with Ashley because the truth is not funny, but you know, I'm from Ghana, she's from Cote d'Ivoire. So we know their reality, we see it, we've seen it, you know, we hear about it. But one thing I want to say, that if Gbagbo is being put on, you know, is being tried for allegedly killing 7 women. And my thing
No,
is,
it's not just that. It's not just that, but you know,
right, and other things, right? So he's and in my head, if that's the number, just 7, one life is a lot. But people have done worse than what killing more people than what he's done. And for them to go after him, it just shows us again what we are saying, that if someone is doing something right and it's not benefiting the West or the global North, you will be taken down.
Yeah,
you know, whether you like it or not. And you bring out Congo, and each time I talk about Congo, I get goosebumps because that country is so blessed with resources. I was reading and watching a video on Congo that it can, the resources it has, water resources alone can electrify the whole Africa 3 times over.
Yeah.
It is that rich, just water alone. So you can imagine other things. And King Leopold II, he never stepped foot in Congo, but he ruled that place. It amazes me. He never once left where he was, I think Belgium. But he ruled it for decades, you know? So that's the power that they have over this continent. And that's the power that is impossible to let go because they've reached mass consumption. That where do you go from there? You just want more, but you don't know what you want. So you just keep making sure that the chains are on the Africans, and it's just the modern slavery, you know, it's not physical chains. So I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I appreciate you speaking the truth, and because we are from the continent, we know well. So I appreciate hearing that kind of power and tone behind it, just kind of encouraging us indirectly too, that we as Africans do need a clear vision, and we as blacks in general do need a vision and to go after it. And it's not white versus black, absolutely not. But you cannot ignore the fact that we have been pushed aside, whether we were aware or not. And I think it's Desmond Tutu, and people just go around like it's Desmond, it's not. But I'll just go with Desmond Tutu because that's where I read it from, which says, when the missionaries came to Africa, they said, let us pray. When we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had the land. You know, so each time that quote comes to me, and it just goes to show that sometimes our benevolence was kind of taken for granted or taken advantage of, and as we opened our lands to new things and to hospitality, because that's what Africans are, unfortunately we got the short end of the stick. And it stinks, but that's the reality. So I appreciate this talk, and it does kind of encourage me to just.
Okay, I just want to react to that. So anyway, so what's your name is?
Celestina.
Celestina. I agree, but I want to add one more thing.
Sure.
You see, it's not because I want to praise your professor, right, Dr. She's calling me Dr. and I call her Amber, Dr. Murray. Okay, so I want to praise, it's not I want to praise her. You see, I am fortunate that in my pathway, personal pathway, that I talk about Africa. I believe Africa, I believe that things are getting better in Africa. And then, I say I'm old, but, I'm not 65 yet. So if God gives me 15 more years or 20 more years and I'm in good health, I think that, we can contribute to advance the cause of Africa and many other people that we're meeting. But there are people like Amber and some other white people in this class, and I've seen them. I've just mentioned, this is my brother David Hoyle. He's a white man. And then, because I hesitated before saying, yes, the ICC is racist. Right? But the guy where we are in Ghana, when David Hoyle stands up to talk, the first thing, Madame Bensouda, the ICC is a dysfunctional court. It's a racist institution. So there are people like that. But of course, they are not going to do the work for us. You see what I'm saying? So this is what I tell black people. They will not do the work for us. Even like 500 years ago or 600 years ago, even when you read about Egypt, you can still find some white, even though there were not many who had a sense of honesty to talk about the history of Africa or to try and defend justice and freedom. But guess what? If people are so scared of white, I know our people, I just mentioned that, I know many of them were killed by Western powers, but people are so afraid that I believe that my job is not to come here and share all the theories that I might read, that even though you know more than I do, but to come and then tell people that it is possible for us to chart a new course in the history of Africa. I went to a spiritual retreat a couple of years ago when I was finishing my PhD. I saw a black American guy, pastor. My plastic bag, it was written Howard University. And he asked me, "Oh, sir, well, what do you study?" I say, he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm finishing my PhD." He said, "What do you study?" I said, "I'm studying Pan-Africanism." The next question, "Do you know what happened to all those who studied Pan-Africanism?" I said, "Sir, yes, I do. Oh, that's why I'm here to pray and fast for 40 days and 40 nights." In 2008, Obama became president. We gathered some Africans in a room. And then but the first time I did the PowerPoint on Pan-Africanism, 90% of the people, Africans, "Nyaka, do not use the word Pan-Africanism. White people are going to come after us. We want to support you, but please do not use Pan-Africanism." People were so scared. I had one of my friends. I had a serious conversation with him. I said, "You know what? I don't know if there is any other word to come and talk about to talk about the reality of Africa and its diaspora and its people. So the only word I know today, we do not talk about Pan-Africanism, but it is Pan-Africanism. We can talk about Ubuntu and so, but the word that is known, that people that can rally people, is Pan-Africanism." And I told him this: I'm going to continue using that word, and then maybe, and I believe in the future, some historical facts will come so that I can be vindicated. That was in 2008. And Amber spoke about what happened in 2010, 2011. And it was a blessing in disguise what happened to Gbagbo and what happened to Gaddafi. It's horrific. But to see a president of a country being like, how can I say that? The way Gaddafi was killed, but it shocked so much Africans that people thought that, you know what, they need to do something. In Ivory Coast, Amber said it, I forgot to mention that, Ivory Coast hasn't supported Pan-Africanism. Houphouët-Boigny was opposed to Kwame Nkrumah, and this is what she was talking about. He was and he's the one who used the word France-Afrique, France-Afrique, France and Africa. And he's the one who used the word Eurafrique, Europe and Africa, when Kwame Nkrumah was talking about Pan-Africanism. Houphouët-Boigny, they did what they did, and then somehow Nkrumah, Sankara, all of them taken out. Gbagbo Laurent came, and this is one of the things that I want to say before I go, so that you can see some of the things that I haven't appreciated in Gbagbo. Because he thought that using the word Pan-Africanism maybe was going to prevent him from becoming president of the country. I never heard Gbagbo using the word Pan-Africanism. He's a nationalist, talking about independence, sovereignty, and freedom. But he hasn't embraced Pan-Africanism the way he wanted, the way he should. But his tragic fate is awakening the masses of Africa. And then because of what happened to Gbagbo, people are waking up in Francophone Africa. You see what I'm saying? So we need to be a little bit more brave or courageous. And the European, or those who want to kill us, even those Negroes who love the Europeans so much, they cannot kill us, all of us. You know, some of us will survive, and some of us will continue, you know, that struggle. So this is what we are doing, and then I believe that we're going to prosper in that.
Thank you, Dr. Lakuku. Thank you to those who joined us for the first time. We're very happy to have you here. We're going to continue with our course. So, and for those students, please, we're going to have a 10 minutes break. But for the rest of you, thanks so much and enjoy your activities.